Hey guys, in this video I want to show you my favorite shortcuts that I use in PowerPoint to really speed up my workflow. So what I've done is I've grouped them together into certain parts that belong together. So we see there's alignment shortcuts, there's scaling shortcuts, there's formatting, the basics, all of these items. Now the reason why I do that is because they're very closely related, so they're very easy to learn. Once you know one, you sort of know the entire group. Now I've also created a poster that you can print out and put on your desk while you're working on presentations, so you sort of get a reminder and you can internalize it a lot faster this way. Now if you want to access that poster, I'll put the link in the description below so you can find it there. Let's get started with the first one, which is the basics. Now, of course, I have to start with the basics because they're the foundation and they build upon the next ones that will come. So I'll quickly go through those as well. What we can see here on the left is we have the Windows version, and then below we have the Mac version. So it doesn't matter which operating system you're using, it works on both. First one is the cut. So that's Ctrl X, we know this one. If we Ctrl X, it puts it on the clipboard. If we Ctrl V, we paste it again. That is pretty straightforward. Then we have Ctrl C, so that is to make a copy, and then we can paste to create a duplicate. And then we also have the Ctrl D one, and this is actually quite a nice one. So if I take one and I press Ctrl or Command D and I place it on the side, I create a duplicate. But if I then not touch anything again and I press Ctrl D again, you see it makes the same duplicate with that same interval. And I can even do it for a group. So for example, I select those, Ctrl D, and then I create a duplicate again. And you see how fast you can sort of go through these duplications and put everything in a nicely aligned order. So that is pretty impressive if you use Ctrl D. Now the next one is, let's just put that here again. If I create a line and I want to undo, I have Ctrl Z. We sort of know this one, we can go back and then we remove the last one. That is pretty nice. But what a lot of people don't know is that you also have a redo if you do Ctrl Y. So you can go back and forth with Ctrl Z and Ctrl Y, you can go back and forth between the last ones that you've done. So that is pretty convenient if you sort of want to undo and redo your actions in PowerPoint. Now let's move to the next one, which is speed copying. And this one here I actually kind of like a lot. And that is if you hold the Control key, you can actually drag items and create a copy. So once you click, it grabs a new one, like a copy, a duplicate, and once you release, it releases it. So that is pretty convenient that you can do that. Now there's one little trick if you hold the Shift key while doing that. So Control, Shift and drag. Well, you can move in straight lines, so it moves on that horizontal axis. And if you go to the vertical axis, and if you go to the horizontal axis, well, you can actually do the same. And it works on either one or multiple objects. So you can select multiple and create that duplicate. Now, if you do this in a nice way, and for example, combine it with the duplicate version, if you Ctrl D and duplicate, you can sort of create really nice items in a very fast way. So if you look at the slides that you could create once you use this shortcut, these start to make a lot more sense while you know them. And the same, of course, works with text. So it's not only with images, you can just hold the Control Shift key and create a duplicate of the text box. Even with images, that also works. So that doesn't really matter how you want to apply this, it works on all of them. So once we know this, we'll get a lot of elements on the slide, like for example, text boxes or maybe like shapes. And next, what we want to do is we want to align them. So let's have a look at the alignment shortcuts. Now we see a lot of people use this as alignment. So they select the text box and then they go here to the top to either left align, center align, right align, or justify. Now what you can do instead is you can use Control or Command E, J, R, and L. So the E stands for center. That is the only odd one out since Control C is already taken, but the other ones are pretty straightforward. So J for justify, R for right, and L for left. So Control R to align to the right, L to the left, J justify, and E center. So you see how fast you can sort of skip between those without always having to select an item and go to that click item. You can also select multiple at once and just go through those. So that is how you can easily align everything to the left, for example, or to the right, or in the center. And we can really start to see where the time saver comes in when using shortcuts. Now I want to mention that shortcuts, they save you seconds and they can really compound over the long run. But if you want to save hours while making presentations, you need a solid system. You need a solid backbone of your presentation. For example, you have a slide with multiple products or themes and you want to add an extra one. Well, it should only take one simple click and PowerPoint should do it automatically for you. Same goes in the other way. If you want to remove some items, you shouldn't be dragging things around. You should let the PowerPoint slide master or your team or Copilot do the heavy lifting for you. And if you want to learn how you can build that system so PowerPoint works for you, well, you can find all of the information of my PowerPoint system program in the description below. So I just want to mention that because if you spend too much time in PowerPoint on the shortcuts, it's only the tip of the iceberg. You need that solid system below to really save hours. And once you have that, and on top of it you add the shortcuts, that's where the real time saver comes in. Now let's move to the next point, which is scaling. Now we know if we select an object and we drag it from the side, we can scale it, but it sort of scales from the bottom left, it anchors there, and it scales it to wherever we drag it. If we hold the Shift key, we can keep that original shape form. So if it's a perfect circle, we hold the Shift key, it remains a perfect circle. Now what is really important about this one is if we use Control and drag. So if we use Control and drag, we see how we scale it from the center. So that makes it very easy for us. If we position something in the right way, we can easily scale it from the center. And again, here, if we hold that Shift key, well, we just make it in that exact shape where we keep that format shape alive. If we don't use it, we can still scale it from the center, but we can get some weird funky shapes around it. Now let me just add a icon, for example. So if I go to icons and I just take one of the icons here, insert it, let's give it a white color and put it here in the center. Now let's say I have that positioned correctly, but I want to increase it just a little bit in size. Well, we're not going to increase it and reposition it again. No, we're just going to hold the Control Shift key and increase it in size. Maybe we group those together and we increase that in size as well. So that is how you can sort of start to scale things proportionally. Same here. If you want to increase that in size, you can do that. If you want to decrease that in size, or you want to increase everything at the same time, select both, and you increase that in size as well. So this is how you can start to scale objects in a very fast way. And this really comes in handy if we have some multiple items on the slide, multiple lists, and we want to increase all of the things at once. And that way scaling really helps us. Now let's have a look at grouping and how we can sort of combine those, because that's really impressive as well. So if I select multiple items, I can press Ctrl G and group them to have them all act as one shape. You see, if I click those, they're still part of the grouping system, but I can now control them all at once. If I press Ctrl Shift G, it will ungroup. And on the MacBook, it is Command Option G or Command Option Shift G. Those are pretty close together, so it's pretty straightforward. Now you don't always have to do only shapes. You can also, for example, let's center this in the middle, place this underneath in the center, and then select both and Ctrl G. And you see how you can now use these as groups. You can even drag and create that copy if you want. So for example, you want to create 3 points. Well, you can easily do it like this. So you can start to combine shapes, group them, and then scale them and reposition them around. So it's really powerful once we start combining those shortcuts as well. So we start to see the power of shortcuts once we start combining these things like grouping, scaling, and then control dragging, duplicating. All of these things really start to work in our favor. And now that we're creating more and more slides, let's have a look at repositioning the slides and slide movements. So what I have here for the slide movements is we can add a new slide, Ctrl Shift N, and we just do Ctrl Shift or Command Shift N, and we can see that on the left here, we've added a new slide. I can do that multiple times to really create multiple slides. So that is pretty straightforward. There's also the option to, if you hold the Control key or the Command key and press the up arrow, well, you can move this slide upwards in the ranking. So that is also pretty convenient if you want to sort of rearrange slides. You don't always have to drag it. You can also use that Control key, do it once, twice, or all the way to the top. And for all the way to the top, you just hold the Shift key. So Control Shift and up arrow, that puts it all the way to the top. And if you do Control Shift and bottom arrow, it puts it all the way to the bottom. And then that arrow key can just navigate it wherever we want to go. So now let's have a look at the text formatting and what we can do there, because it's only the basic again, but once we start to build on this, that is actually where the real time saver comes in. So what we can see here is we have multiple just plain text boxes, but we can easily make them bold, italic, underline, or even link them by using Ctrl B, I, U, and K. So if we do Ctrl B, make it bold, U, we make it underline, I for italic, and then if we press K, this is where we can add our URL links. So if you want to have a linked file, you can easily do that here. So if you want to link it to, for example, a website, you can do that. But also in this document, you can link it to, for example, a slide. For example, I link it to the basic shortcuts, OK. And then if I present this and I click on this, it will go to that slide. So that is also a pretty convenient one. If you ever want to sort of link in between slides, you can just use that Ctrl K function. Now, once we're on the topic of formatting, let's have a look at my favorite one, which is copy paste formatting. And here what we can see is these different elements, they each have their own style. So they have a fill color, a gradient. And if you want me to make this purple one the dominant one or the main one, I just press Ctrl-Shift-C and then select another object, Ctrl-Shift-V to paste that same formatting. So this goes on objects and it really creates that exact same fill. So if I give this a different outline, maybe red, and I make it bold, so let's add some weight to it, and I Ctrl-Shift-C and Ctrl-Shift-V, well, then I can just copy that exact same formatting, which saves a lot of time. So you don't have to do any manual work, you can do that in a very fast way. Now this also works for text. So if I select a text element and I want to make this purple and then give this a totally different font, Sign Painter, and I Ctrl-Shift-C, well, I can easily do that on the other text boxes. So once you have them aligned the way you want, formatted the way you want, you can do that. What you can also do is select one of the words, and here select a word to really highlight it. So if you want to highlight that, that is also perfectly possible here as well. And this is really one that will save you a lot of time. So now that we're creating a lot of content and a lot of elements on the slide, we also have to think about that layering. So sometimes we have so many elements and we want to shift something forward, backward, or somewhere in the middle. And also for that, we can use a simple shortcut. Now here we can see 3 different layers. So I have this purple one here on top, this one in the middle, and this one here all the way at the back. Now, if I want to send them forward, I use that control bracket, or on a MacBook, I use Command Option Shift F. Now, if I want to shift one of these all the way to the front, for example, this one here, I can use send to front, Control Shift, and then that bracket, or on a MacBook, Command Shift F to bring it to the front. And I can repeat that for the others. If I want to send something to the front, I can easily do it like this and send it to the front, or use the same one to send it to the back. So I can choose if I want to send it to front or to the back. And if I want to send it one layer backward, that can also work. So I just do it like this and send it one layer backward or one layer forward each time. So those are the shortcuts that can really save you a lot of time if you don't want to do that. Right click and then bring to front, send forward. If you don't want to do that, you can easily use that shortcut. So these are the shortcuts that I use on a day-to-day basis as a presentation designer. What I suggest you do is download the PDF and just go through them one by one in group, start to learn them, start to internalize them. But keep in mind that if you're working with shortcuts, they only save you seconds. If you want to really speed up your level, you have to build a PowerPoint system. So if you're interested in that, you can also find the link in the description below. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.